While the actors are in front of the camera, the director, producer, camera, sound people, lighting people, and basically everybody else is behind it.
The camera operator's job is to record the actor's action using cameras. As soon as the assistant director calls
rolling,
that means the cameras are turned on. Then the director will call
action.
The actors start to act and everybody stops when the director calls cut.
So when people talk about box office sales and opening weekends, what exactly does that mean and why are they so important?
Okay, the key to opening weekend is something recently like Bad Neighbors, which just came up against Spider-Man 3. You have an absolute franchise, Spider-Man, that was dominating the box office, and then you have a new Seth Rogen, Zac Efron comedy. Two different genres of films, so what they were hoping is that one would not knock the other off, and in fact, Bad Neighbors had a massive weekend opening. So what that means is they're going to expand, they're going to add more cinemas, and it'll get great word of mouth, and it's got great reviews. And the bigger it does in the US, the more it sells for overseas.
Wow.
And the more DVD sales and the more they get for iTunes and the more they get for everything else. So opening weekend is when everyone stresses massively. If the film even gets a theatrical release, because there are some films that may never go to the cinema, they may go straight to the web or to ancillary.
I've managed to pin down two of Australia's rising stars in the film industry. Cat Warren, who directs films, and Lola Hewison, who is a gun cinematographer. Hi, girls. Hi. So, Kat, tell us, what's your job as a director?
Well, the director has a lot of jobs on the set. They normally finalise the choosing of the cast. They have a close relationship with the cinematographer, who would be Lola. So we work together to get the right cinematography. And they make sure that the actors really give out the performance that they want them to.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility, making sure the film works out. So, Kat, what advice can you give kids that want to direct?
Everyone needs to know where it's going to be, what time it's going to be, and what is required. So normally that would be a script and a release form. So they all of the cast and crew needed to have had to read the script in advance before the shoot. The assistant director or any of the crew members need to have a shot list, so you can tick off which shots you've done, so you don't have 10 of one shot and 0 of another. And you have to choose actors that can concentrate for a long period of time on a film set, and that will keep it smooth.
When you're using cameras, make sure the camera battery is on full and you've got an adult around just in case you get stuck. Use a tripod to stop the camera from becoming shaky.
Well, cinematography, like all art form, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And depending upon where you grew up and what your house looked like and what language you speak and whether you come from a nation of, very subdued, quiet people or really loud partying kind of people, it's going to influence your aesthetic and the way you look at the world. So, Australian cinematographers are world class. And, so many films that are shot around the world are shot by Australian cinematographers. And you have to wonder why people coming from a relatively small populated country can have such an impact in a market, especially in the US where there's a gazillion cinematographers to compete against. Why are, 6 of 10 films in Hollywood being shot by Australians? And it must be a cultural reason. Australian cinematographers are sort of famous for being able to make great pictures without needing a lot of equipment and time to do it. But we also come from a very bright, sunny, wide landscape.
Yeah.
We have big horizons and massive skies, and so that influences the way we see the world. So we're great at big widescreen landscape films.
Well, basically the cinematographer is the person that's behind the camera and filming. It's the person who, as a cinematographer, you have to take the director, so Kat in this, for instance, her idea and put it into like a visual from your camera. So you're taking whatever idea she's got and just putting it into the film through the camera.
So Lola, what are some tips you can give to all those kids out there with the camera that want to start filming?
Some of the tips would be always try and capture all the action that's going on. Well, follow the action and make sure that when you're doing, just don't film something where there's actually nothing going on. You always have to film where there's something going on. And make sure sometimes in a film you have to get close-ups, even if you don't even like them that much. It's important to capture the emotion in how few actors have on their faces, just to see how they're going, even if it's not even main character, it could just be someone from the crowd or something. Just make sure you've got all those types of shots that kind of always make a difference in how you're going to be making the film. One of the issues with editing as well is sometimes there's continuity, so just make sure if someone has a blue shirt on and then in the next scene that same person, which it's meant to be in the same day, has a red shirt on. It just doesn't work if it's going to be edited that way. You would have to refilm it, so just make sure of that. Also make sure you get a wide shot in there, because it's almost like a safety shot where you've got everything going on in it, and it's got all the actors doing all their things in that one scene, so it's you know what's going on.
Anyone in front of the camera is called the cast. So anyone behind the camera is called the crew. This includes your camera people and also the lighting people. It's a good idea to get someone to focus on just the lighting while you're shooting your film. If you're shooting outdoors, you're going to have the sunlight. So sometimes it might be too bright or it might be casting lots of shadow. So it's a good idea to bring some white umbrellas on standby or some shades to put up. Now, it is easier to maybe shoot indoors because you can put up your own lights and it becomes a more controlled environment.
Once you're up to the fun part of set design and costume design and you're on the hunt for cheap costumes, why don't you try eBay or local op shops? And if you need to decorate your set, try some $2 shops. I know they have all sorts of bits and pieces there.
Can you give us some tips for the kids about working on a film set?
Yeah, I guess there's three main things to remember. You want to be safe, you want to be as professional as you can, and you want to learn and have a lot of fun. So keeping safe is just about being aware of equipment, lights, heavy things. Don't run on sets, trip on cords, that sort of thing. Be as professional as you can. Treat it seriously, and you can do the best job that you can to make fantastic films. And have fun, that's a no-brainer.
And if you do all of those things, you're going to learn a lot and be awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much, Emma. See ya. Now, the shot list is all being ticked off and it's time to print because we're wrapped for the day on production. Now, we can all be really proud of our hard work and go home and get some sleep.
So, we've shot our film, but it's not ready to show anyone yet.
The footage that you've got, which is called rushes, need to go to a film editor, who will choose the best bits and piece together the film or TV episode bit by bit, so that the whole film or TV program comes together and makes sense and is exactly how the director imagined it.
Another thing to keep in mind about editors are they work across a range of different types of finished products. So, for instance, in the very short things, there's television commercials, which can be 15 or 30 seconds long, right through to the very long ones like a television miniseries or a feature film. There's also, of course, different genres. So there can be action films or, romances, or it could be corporate videos. So there are a range of different styles and different audiences that editors are editing for, and it's probably a good idea to think about which area you're interested in, because if that's what you want to do, that's the sort of work you should be doing.
I think you've got to be a storyteller. At film school, when we went through, one of the key pieces of advice I got told was that a film is generally written 3 times. So you've got the writer who writes it. It gets rewritten when you're directing, because how the director sees things and how they put the story together and how they film it tells another story. But the editor deals with what you actually have. So you might have all these grand ideas in the writing and in the directing, but the editor looks at the footage and goes, okay, that didn't work. That beautiful tube shot that goes over the canyon, yeah, we don't need it, doesn't advance the story. So the editor uses what they actually have filmed and then writes the story again through the edit.
When you first learn to be an editor, you can use some free programs on your computer such as iMovie or Windows Movie Maker to get started. But the pros use Final Cut, Adobe Premiere Pro and Avid because they have a lot more features and can do a lot more things that the simpler programs might not be able to do.
An editor is very creative and very patient. Editing can take a long time, and to be a good editor you have to have a really good eye for detail. And like everything else to do with film and TV, you have to practice your craft over and over so that you keep getting better and better.
Well, if you're serious about working in the film and television industry, then the key thing is to meet people and to network and get to know, who might possibly give you your next job. So establishing that, everybody's got to start out, and there's very few people who work in the industry who straight away know people. Everybody's got to start out. So, I mean, there's obviously your peers, your friends and so on, that's important, but it's also really important to be meeting people who are well established in the industry and just letting them know that you are interested in being a part of it and keen, and you tell them about your experiences. And so when you start out, obviously you don't have a lot of experience, but that in itself is not a bad thing. Obviously, like anybody, you need to build that experience, but you also need to be creating relationships with people that would think of you when they need someone to help them.
Lots of big action movies have special effects. Where you see superheroes flying through the skies, or huge explosions, or evil monsters wrecking the world. Spoiler alert, but this is not really happening. It's fake. It's been created by a special effects expert who has built it using software on a computer.
Once I've edited my film, I'm left thinking, wow, I need something really action-packed or a big fireball to come in or something.
Yeah.
What now?
What now? So you look at your film and you go, something missing. Look, it depends on the nature of what you're trying to do. If you're organised and you've worked out your editing and stuff and you really can't work your way around it, you can always do things like reshoot or like do pickup, what they call pickup. So you're like, oh, we really needed that reaction shot. That starts getting a bit tricky. If you mean literally, I want a big fireball in my film, there is a little secret that's not usually real, it's not usually filmed. It's called visual effects. So, and you'll be surprised, there's actually quite a lot of stuff out there that you can search for on how to make your own visual effects on different software packages. So it's worth having a look if you want that big explosion or you want the like the fireball or something like that, just to see what you can generate. The other thing I would say is sound. Sound gets ignored. Sound doesn't get the attention it deserves. You can add a lot with a really good sound design as well. Someone actually said it, they reckon that sound makes up a good 50% of the film. And it's funny because you think of film as being a very, very visual medium, but you'll be surprised at how adding sound can actually enhance or tell a different story to what people are seeing visually.
In editing, a movie or TV program has two parts, what you can see and what you can hear. In films and TV programming, usually the sound is edited by a specialist who is skilled in working with dialogue, music and sound effects and putting them all together so that they match. You can edit audio yourself at home using GarageBand or some free programs on the internet like Audacity, but professional sound editors use Pro Tools or Adobe Audition.
For a movie, there's going to be people, actors talking, so you have dialogue tracks, sound effects, so that when they slip on a banana peel, you get a silly sound effect. The car zooming past has to zoom, it can't just quietly go, because in effect, a lot of the sound conjures the emotion and the intensity of the scenes that you're seeing. Music is another big part that will be used, and I don't actually make the music myself. A composer will write the music and record it in a different studio with musicians, and they'll send the finished music across. The director will be like, yes, I'm happy with that, and then we'll place it in the right spot. So if there's a sad scene, we'll have sad music, obviously. If there's a fast scene, a car chase, we want something that's got a lot of beat and tense and drives and conveys the emotion of what's going on.
So Sam, when you make sound for movies, what are the main things you need to consider?
Well, the first big one, I suppose, is sync. When I'm putting sound effects to vision, I need to make sure that they line up what you're hearing with what you're seeing. It's no good if someone throws a punch and the thud of the punch happens before their fist hits who they're punching in the movie or whatever. It's got to be believable. Another thing is consistency of the volume that you're making things. The overall consistency. Some bits of the movie are going to get louder and some bits will be quieter depending on what's happening, but the overall consistency, the average level, has to remain from the start to the finish. Okay. Generally things like the level of a conversation at a normal volume has to be the same in the first scene as in the last scene, or your audience are going to be getting driven mad reaching for the remote all the time. And the other thing is, you have to match the tone of what you're doing and the vibe of what you're doing with what you're seeing on the screen. I suppose, again, the believability is very important, more from a sound design point of view than a mixing point of view. I suppose those areas can cross over quite a lot. But if you have people talking in a bathroom and you've recorded their voices and the sound effects in a carpeted room, those two spaces sound very different, and so it's not going to be believable when you see them talking in a bathroom and the words are coming out sounding like they're not actually in that room.
Okay.
That's the main things.
Finally, don't forget to add your credits. That's what you see at the end of your film. It's a list of everyone and everything that has been involved in your film. You better not forget anyone, especially me.
Here at Roadshow Films, we are a distributor, which means that we don't actually make the movies. The movies are made by producers in Australia. So in Australia, when someone comes in, they not only have the screenplay, they have the person who's going to put that screenplay together. And there are generally 5 elements that we're looking for in terms of a packaged project, we call it, when movies come together. We look to see who the director is, we look to see what the cast is going to be, we look to see who that producer is and what they've done before, we looked at what the budget is, and then of course we looked at the screenplay itself. So it's not just the screenplay that we're looking at that entire structure that goes around making the movie. So here screenplay is an essential part of that, and we are looking for a completed screenplay and those other attachments. If, however, we were in Los Angeles and you were going in to pitch to Warner Brothers, for instance, then the studio actually can just put all of those elements around a project that they're interested in, and you could just give them a pitch and they could say, "We love that pitch, go write it." So in LA it tends to work that way with the studios or screenplay, either or. But here we tend to want to see a screenplay and a producer.
So Australia is quite a small film market, so a lot of filmmakers send their films overseas. If I were to send my film overseas, what do you think I would need to think about?
Australia is only 3% of the English-speaking population. I always give the disclaimer, I'm proudly Australian. I've lived here for almost 20 years and become Australian. But my philosophy is sell Coke, not Vegemite. Nobody cares about Vegemite outside our shores. It's very bad for you. I'm gonna stop this Vegemite curse. But Coke sells in 150 countries. So we want something that everybody understands. That's why films that are very culturally xenophobic then only really appeal to Australians. If it's a tiny budget, it can make its money back here. Yes. But if it's a reasonable budget, it has to go and do very well universally. So really with Dust and Glory, we want to do well in our own backyard here. I mean, it is an Australian story, yes. But monetarily, we really don't care. We don't care how well it does here in box office, but morally and ethically and emotionally, we really want it to do well here at home.
What makes a big, not necessarily big, a good producer?
Producing's a really funny role. It's funny, we're talking about very clearly defined roles. I would argue that on a film, the producer is probably the least defined of the roles. Everyone has a fairly clearly role. This is from a production point of view, but even, when you get into distribution and sales, they're clearly defined roles. Producer kind of sits in between every other role. They need to have an overall understanding So there's different kind of producers. Some are incredibly good at working with writers and crafting a script. Some are great at marketing. Some are good at having relationships with financiers. Some are really good at running the set. You need to kind of have an understanding of all of that. It'd be a pretty rare person that's equally good at all those very diverse things, but I'd say for every different producer, there's different areas of expertise. They're all different ways of doing it. So I think generally you need to be able to handle lots of different balls in the air at the same time and keep everything moving forward. You need to be able to work well with people, both creatively, financially. You need to have an understanding of what's important to the storytellers and what's important to the audience and the distribution system that gets to them. So I once described producing as like trying to ride a wild stallion bareback along a beach on a hot day, juggling ice blocks while people throw rocks at you. And sometimes it feels like that you're in constant crisis management mode. And it's really diverse. You can have a meeting with union officials and with the local council. You can be working on scripts and then working on the distribution strategies for those end films. So in any one day, you can be doing lots and lots of different things. It's the reality now that audiences are looking to watch what they want, when they want, how they want. And the industry's struggling to adjust to that.
So they're all cons.
Yeah, look, I think now's possibly the most exciting time for young storytellers to be entering the industry, because the impediments to being able to tell your story for an audience are evaporating. As you said, you can write a story, you can create it on your tablet, you can put it up on YouTube, and you can be showing it to people within the day. That's never been possible before. And so you can be building audiences, you can be finding people who connect with your story in an immediate way that's never been possible before. Now, the challenge is how do you turn that into a business model? But that's probably secondary, I think.
For the mainstream cinemas, they want to basically make sure that every film they've got is going to take the most money it possibly can. For those that have a little bit of an upmarket audience as well, they'll look at some upmarket type films, some art house films, but primarily the art house films will play in traditional art house cinemas. And they will just pick the films that are going to give them the best box office return. The more people that come to see them, the more people buy things from the candy bar as well, and they can maximise their return. The producers of film make their money back by all revenue streams. So a cut goes back to distribution, from which we pay royalties to the producers and we keep a share ourselves. The same thing happens then with DVD, with what we call EST, which is electronic sell-through. There's pay TV, there's free TV, there's airlines. So every single window, the distribution arm keeps some money and some of the money goes back to the producers. If the film is successful, they make money from all revenue streams. If the film is not successful, then really no one makes any money.
As you can see, a lot of hard work and time goes into making a great film, but it's also a lot of fun. And in the end, you can sit down on the couch with your popcorn and your friends and watch your movie. Or, if you want lots of people around the world to see it, you could possibly enter it in film festivals. Film festivals, but aren't they for adults? Well, yeah, they are, but here's something you might not know. A lot of them are actually for young people, and you have to be a kid to enter. So tick, that's you.
So my number one piece of advice is that you can actually make it. You can make something. The world has changed. There is more technology that is cheaper and more accessible and easier to use than it's ever been. So if you're scared and you think, oh, I don't know, I don't think I could do that, you really can. And it's not that hard anymore. All you need to do, if you've got a little bit of passion, go on the internet, look up how people make films, even use your phone and make something.
I feel like the best thing you can do is surround yourself with other good people and put a bit of kind of collaborative thought and energy into the project so that it can have a chance to be better or elevate you against everything else, because something that's going on at the moment is that there's so much stuff being made. YouTube is just full of stuff and it can be hard to get an audience for your work if you're not really careful about how you could make this particular story work better than you thought originally.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of other brains on the project sometimes to push you to your best.
Yeah.
So the first tip is find good friends that are reliable, that you trust, who have good taste, and work hard and, form a little collective and start working together.
If you need any more information, just go to the Kids Corner on the Far Out Films page.
Oh, I know. Go and find your local TV and film school.
Yeah, because there you can network and meet other kids that want to make films and learn from some real industry professionals. Well, you must be well on your way to becoming a professional filmmaker by the end of this episode. All you need to do now is grab your even iPhone, grab a microphone, get a story together and begin filming. There are loads of awards just waiting for you. Just remember us when you become famous.
Well, that's a wrap. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.